Okay, so we've learned about relating fractions, decimals, and percent. Now we're going to solve some percent problems. But before we get into calculating, we're going to do it with mental math, because that's a problem you're going to be solving every single day of your life, I promise you. So this is important. When do we solve percent problems? Every single day. You got restaurant tips. Yeah, that waiter show was effective. I think I'll give him a substantial tip, perhaps 20%. Tax, 12%. That tax man always gets you. And discount, you like the sweet deals. Okay, so you're going to be using these things, these skills all the time. So why not do it mentally? Get a good estimate at least. So how do you solve percent problems using your noodle? You solve them by using the power of 10%. Finding 10% is very, very easy. So how do you solve percent? 10%. 10% of a number is super easy to calculate because finding 10% of a number is as simple as dividing by 10. And dividing by 10 is as simple as moving your decimal place one place to the left. Your decimal point one place to the left. Right? 20 divided by 10 becomes 2. We moved it from here, 20.0, to here, 2.0, 2. 10.5 divided by 10. You're moving that decimal one place to the left. It's 1.05. 200.75 divided by 10. Move it one place to the left, it becomes 20.075. Very simple, dividing by 10. So how does this fit in with the equivalent fractions thing that we were looking at before? Well, think about finding 10% of 20. 10 over 100, or 10 hundredths, is equal to 10%. 10 per 100, 10%, right? So couldn't we make an equivalent fraction? 10 hundredths is equal to how many 20ths? Because we're trying to find out what number is 10% of 20. 10 hundredths is equal to 2 20ths. You can see they're equivalent fractions. 100 divided by 5 gives you 20. 10 divided by 5 gives you 2. So that's just to prove it to you, but finding 10% is simple. It's just moving the decimal place one place to the left. So now we can use the 10% rule to estimate. So let's say you need to find out 30% of 40. Start by finding 10% of 40 to create a baseline. So 10% of 40 is 4. All right? Now you can build up. 20% of 40 is just 10% times 2, right? Or if you like repeated addition, because you don't like multiplication for some reason, it's 10% plus 10%. And if 10% was 4, then that's going to give you 8. So 20% of 40 is 8. Now we wanted to find out 30%, so we just keep building it up. So if 10% of 40 is 4, then 30% of 40 must be 10% times 3. 3 times 10% is 30%. And if 10% was 4, it's 4 times 3, 12. So count with me. 10% of 40 is 4. 20% of 40 is 8. 30% of 40 is 12. 40% of 40 is 16. You get the picture. So now we can also use the 5% rule to estimate. So if you can find 10% of a number so easily, and that is easy, 10% of 65 is 6.5. I don't need a calculator for that. And you can find 20% of a number so easily. Well, 20% of 65 is 6.5 times 2, right? Or 13. Then you should be able to find 5% of a number, because it's just half of 10%. So 5% of 65 is just the 10%, 6.5, that we found out earlier, divided by 2, or 3.25. And from that, I can put 20%, 5% together to find 25% of a number. 25% of 65 is 20% plus 5%, or 13 plus 3.25, 16.25. Look at this chart. This will make things a little easier. 10% of 30 is 3. 20% of 30 is 6. Say we just doubled 10% to get 20%. 5% of 30 is 1.5. See how we just cut it 10% in half to get 5%? And now 25% of 30, I just have to put together the 20%, the 6, and the 5, and I get a mistake. Hang on. That's more like it. Okay, so I get 25% is 20% of 30, which is 6, and 5%, which is 1.5. Add them together, you get 7.5. Easy peasy. Same thing goes for this example down here. I'm going to continue this on in the next part. It should be just a couple minutes, and you can practice on the quiz. All right.